So that was portrait to just show you the incredible features of the Gothic architecture. We'll walk around. We'll go off to the right first before going upstairs, just so you can get a sense of the size of this place and a little bit more appreciation of its architecture. Hope YouTube can handle this orientation shift without too much of a problem. All right, you see more entrances and exits, and you can see the cool architecture all around. All right, let's go up towards the cells. So, needless to say, during the French Revolution, they were just rounding people up that were considered counter-revolutionaries. So there was a law passed that essentially said, or actually did say, that if you were convicted of being a counter-revolutionary, the penalty was death. So they actually held the trials in this building, and if you were convicted, you were immediately sent to the prison to await the death sentence. The only options at the trial were either innocence or guilt, and consequently the death penalty. There was no intermediary options. So what's interesting here is we're going to go into this room to my left here. So this was actually part of the cell that was used by Marie Antoinette. So unfortunately, in the meantime, they've built a wall here between the rest of her cell, which I'll show you in a minute, and this part here, which was part of her cell, and it's now used to display a little bit of the history. Look at those keys and locks. Serious locks, serious keys. Here it talks about the trials that they had here. And here we have some nice models to show you. There's the Sainte-Chapelle over there on the left, the Palace of Justice, and this part of the Conciergerie. All right, let's go upstairs. That's where we'll see the actual cells, and there's also a place which lists the names of the people that were brought here for trial. And we're talking about literally thousands of people that were brought in here. Here you go. So on the wall here, they put in the names, you can see, of all the people that were tried here. Just over a very short period of time. And as you can see, lots of people. Like I said, literally thousands of people were tried here. Most of them convicted. And here they have a list of some of their more famous prisoners. It's in French and English though, so there's translation if your French is a little rusty. Let's go take a look at some of the actual cells. Now this is not the cells for Marie Antoinette. These were the cells that most people lived in. And you're gonna see they're very small. There's no windows. There's no toilet facilities. They're only about 3 to 4 meters wide. And they would have about 7 prisoners sharing a cell like this. So you can imagine it was very unsanitary. So there's some stories that have been written by some of the people that were brought here and describing the conditions. And so as you can imagine, very bleak conditions. Here's another cell. So as you see, that's a reflection there. There's actually, as you can see, no windows, no light basically. Once this door shuts, I mean, you can see the door here, pretty ominous. So no light, or very little light, and no light, with 7 people in a very small area. So here's another cell. They're all pretty much identical. It's kind of dark, you can't really see, but that gives you an idea. If you'd lived there, you wouldn't have been able to see anything most of the time. And they have, it's a great museum. They have all kinds of explanations here of how the system worked, the justice system worked. We're going to go downstairs, which will show you the chapel and the other part of Marie Antoinette's cell. Here's Robespierre, of course, was in charge, and he was leading the Reign of Terror. And then it turned around on him, and he was, of course, sentenced and executed. And so it's explaining that he spent his last days of his life here. They used a Republican calendar, as you can see there, with the translation into the Gregorian calendar that we use. Let's go down the steps and check out the chapel. And then Marie Antoinette's cell. And then we'll go outside and I'll show you what this place looks like from the outside, because it's pretty impressive. All right, here we are. So you can see the chapel, the altar. So relatively simple, of course. So these would have been objects that were held by Marie Antoinette here. She obviously had a much better deal than the other prisoners in terms of lodging, since she had her own private cell with her family, and she actually had a toilet, so much upgraded facilities compared to the other prisoners, as we saw. And she was allowed to have some of these objects with her. All right, now we will go into what was Marie Antoinette's cell. It was later transformed into a chapel or a shrine to her memory after we had a counter-revolution and the monarchy was restored. Her brother, Louis XVI, younger brother, had this installed as a memorial to her. This section here is to Madame Elizabeth, who was a sister of the king, and this right here dedicated to Marie Antoinette. So you can see some great paintings here. An inscription in Latin. Okay, and here's an extract from the letter of Marie Antoinette to her sister that I just showed you earlier, Madame Elizabeth. So, some touching words. Main thing, she was she mentions in the letter is some advice to her son, not to hold any grudges and to not to seek retribution against those people that killed their father and of course later, subsequently, his mother. Okay, let's go out into the courtyard and circle back around. Kind of crowded here today. Whoa. Here we have the courtyard. So the Royal Chapel I was telling you about, the Sainte-Chapelle, just behind these buildings, so you can't see it from here, but you do get to see the interior courtyard of the Conciergerie. Hard to imagine the conditions that these prisoners had to suffer during their short stay. Interestingly enough, it was kind of a little bit corrupt because one of the things they did is, I mentioned how you'd have 7 prisoners in a very small space. There was no beds, by the way, but you could actually pay money to have a better prison cell where you would actually have a bed. So it would still be shared space, but you would get a bed instead of not having a bed. So a lot of these people that were arrested, of course, were very wealthy and were nobles, and they would very willingly pay to have slightly better accommodations, even knowing that, of course, they're on death row and they're going to die within a few days. And people would pay a little, they would pay more money to get a few extra days, to get maybe a day or a couple extra days of delaying their execution. So they couldn't get out of the execution, but they could delay it, and it was apparently a very profitable business of renting out these rooms and beds and delaying the execution by a short period of time. All right, so that gives you an idea of the Conciergerie and the conditions that Marie Antoinette and the others had to endure. Let's go outside so you can see what this building looks like. Have really huge fireplaces here. Can show you when we go outside what this place looks like from the outside, and also the neighboring buildings like the Justice Palace and the Notre Dame Cathedral. So you can kind of see why we didn't have signal, because we're fairly low, below the street level here. And there we are. All right, let's go take a look at the neighborhood, just so you get some idea. So there is a bridge. So as I mentioned before, we're on an island. There's the bridge leaving the island, going over the river. And here we have a clock. And this is the oldest clock in Paris, oldest public clock in Paris. You can see it's pretty impressive in its design right here on this building with its inscription. Again in Latin. And we'll just cross the bridge here so you can see what the building looks like from the outside. And it gives you a little sense of what it's like to walk along the river in Paris. The river is very high today, so there's been some low levels of flooding of the river. It's not usually this high. The town hall there in the distance. All right, and there's the building. Maybe a little hard to see with this lighting. This building is amazing to see at night when it's all lit up. It's one of the things that's very nice about Paris is you can do a night walk, and these buildings with all this amazing architecture are lit up very nicely. And over there is where they will build in the summertime the Paris beaches, Paris Plage, which we have every summer. So anyways, that's where we are. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact me on Twitter or on YouTube. You just put a comment in the YouTube section there, or on Twitter. You can tweet me at Maestro. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. Very important. Smash that like button. All right, I'll talk to you guys real soon. Thanks. Bye.